Welcome back to The Other Side of Change, only on the Black Star Network. My name is Jamira Burley, and as always, I am joined by my brilliant co-host, Brea Baker. We have some beautiful Black history conversations queried up for the rest of the month, but we cannot ignore the elephant in the room, the Epstein files.
Yeah, we didn't even want to have to detract from celebrating Black history because that's so important in this time. But in the last 2 weeks, millions of pages from the Epstein files have been released, and Republicans are doing everything possible to bury the information inside those documents. So we would be remiss not to have this conversation. And what we've seen, Unredacted, has been vile and reiterates that some of the wealthiest and most powerful people in the world have participated in unspeakable amounts of violence.
Yeah, and we're going to break it down and what we know so far and what's still to come. And most importantly, how we stand with survivors and ensure that our systems, the systems that allows us to protect them, do not cut them off from that access. So before we get started into that, we're going to, of course, remix the headlines.
Yes. Well, listen, I'm still riding the high of the Bad Bunny Super Bowl halftime show. I love this headline from CNN about redefining what it means to be an American patriot. He reminds us that, first of all, there is North America, South America, and so many beautiful countries and islands that make up the Americas. And the United States does not get a monopoly on what it is to be American. But just like the portrayal of Puerto Rican and Caribbean life, of like New York Latino culture, like it was just so, it made me so nostalgic. It was so beautiful. Opening in sugarcane plantations, closing out with the electric poles, and making, just like so many beautiful statements made, but also just keeping it really fun and entertaining, and really, I was up on my chair hitting my little bachata at different points. So I was like so happy that was the show that we got this year, and especially because the Super Bowl was Black, to be honest. So we needed it.
No. That's so real. Ironically enough, I don't really watch the little, sideline game unless it's the Eagles, but I really don't really engage with the NFL at all anymore. But I did watch the performance as a recap on YouTube, and I have to say it was stunning. It was stunning. The colors, the textures, the range of people, and the acknowledgement, to your point, of the Americas and who all fits within that. And the idea that so many people were claiming that an American citizen should only be the ones to perform at a Super Bowl. Babes, Puerto Rico is a part of America. Yep, there's exactly. Bad Bunny is actually a U.S. citizen. So it's just a prime example. We've left so many kids behind in so many kids behind, and they're still behind.
And the left behind kids are adult voters, and we are experiencing all of the consequences of that. So we got to get it together.
Absolutely. And even if people just look at the history of California, right, and San Francisco, and like all the places that they claim to love about California, maybe do a little research. You might be surprised at what you'll learn under the hood, right? Like it's right. This is not always how the earth looked and who owned certain lands. So Hispanic people and Mexican people and those a part of the diaspora have access and should have claim to this land as much as anyone else. So, but yeah, it was a beautiful, beautiful performance. And I think, again, redefining what it means to be an American patriot, and that it isn't just a white male in a uniform, that it can be anyone in this country or in the surrounding countries, redefining that for themselves and what it means to stand up for their culture. So beautiful, beautiful night. I wish I could say I had good news, but I don't, because unfortunately we have an orange president in the White House who is constantly looking for ways to grift the American people. Some of you have been sleeping under a rock, you may not know that Donald Trump is suing the government for $10 billion in a lawsuit filed demanding $10 million in damages from the federal government that he oversees, right? Alleging that he's wrong in his personal capacity. The scenario, which appears he gave final say on whether or not to walk the settlement back, Donald Trump is now claiming that he plans to donate that money to charity. Mind you, the money is the American people money that he is trying to.
Right. So you're going to take our taxpayer dollars and put our taxpayer dollars somewhere.
Yep.
That you get to privately dictate.
Yeah, and mind you, this is not a real process, right? Is actually he is trying to get the people that are under his leadership to just hand him over $10 billion without any sort of due process or any sort of like real accountability. Luckily enough, he's receiving pushback from a wide range of people across the political spectrum. But that has never stopped Donald Trump in his efforts. But again, this is just another example of him trying to rob the piggy bank of the American people in broad daylight.
And that's what he's been doing his entire career, is robbing folks in broad daylight, getting away with it, boasting about it, bragging about it. And it's just, I really don't know
he's
what
testing the limits.
Yeah, exactly. And he keeps pushing the line back, and he's proving that Republicans do not have a, okay, this is the past. There's no point of no return for them. Mm-hmm. They will constantly push further right by him and by others like him, because it's not going to just go away when Trump goes away. I think that they've proven that there's no morality guiding what they're doing. There's no compass guiding what they're doing. So we have to be that. We have to be that boundary. We have to be that checks and balances, because right now it's just mayhem over there.
Yeah. What a hot mess.
Well, to the point of resistance and constantly pushing back, I've been so proud of really all of the protesters standing against ICE. It reminds me of the earlier moments of 2020, of the earlier moments of 2014, just like seeing just like this like grassroots outpouring. But I love this headline from The Guardian. These are the high schoolers taking a stand against ICE. Quote, "You can't let despair take over." And that reminds me of the Miriam Kaba quote of let this moment radicalize you and not lead you to despair. And I feel that right now. As I said, like in 2014 and 2020, I feel people being radicalized. There's so much pain and grief, and people are poorer than ever, more scared than ever, more vulnerable than ever. And yet community is showing up, mutual aid networks are being built, like protesters, Minneapolis looks a lot like what Ferguson was giving, looks a lot like what New York was looking like during Occupy. And I hate that it takes loss of life to get us to this point. But I do hope that more people are being politicized to find their place in the movement, to get off of the sidelines and to speak out, and to see so many high schoolers and young people,
middle schoolers.
It just makes me so proud. Like, there have been so many walkouts, and even where I live, and I live in Georgia, and so there are like these forums where parents and local community members are like commenting on it, and oh my God, the kids keep walking out, and I'm just like, the kids are all right. Not all of them, but most of these kids are all right. And I'm really.
And this is what we want kids to do, right? Like, we want well-informed, educated young people to make decisions about what they will and will not allow to happen in their name and with their tax dollars as well, right? Like, this lays the foundation for the type of future that they will have in this country. And ironically enough, it reminds me of, which is why I get a little annoyed when folks compare ICE to the Nazis, when really the Nazis took their directions from us, right? So when you think about like the slave patrols, when slave patrollers were coming up north to recapture slaves that had escaped from the South, they encountered a lot of resistance from neighbors, even neighbors who didn't necessarily disagree with slavery. But the idea of coming into someone's neighborhood and taking someone's neighbor and surveilling that community rubs people the wrong way. And I think that is one of the things that is radicalizing people, even if they have mixed emotions or nuanced emotions about what it means to have border control and immigration processes. There is something really disturbing about a government that thinks it can come into our communities, into our schools, into our hospitals and churches and supermarkets, and take people who are members of our communities and just disappear them, right? That 5-year-old kids can be used as baits to get their parents out of the house. Like, so it's been inspiring seeing young people walk out of school and try to hold their elected officials accountable. I'm also been really inspired by the videos of people using the whistles to like alert their neighbors that ICE is in the neighborhood, which so crafty, so creative, and is something that each and every one of us can do in our very small way of how to stand up. So We got to take back that power as much as we can. My final headline is the San Francisco Schools District, San Francisco United School District is poised to enter its second day of striking, with schools closed for the nearly 50,000 students as union leaders and district officials remain deadlocked. The strike, which started yesterday on Monday, the day after Super Bowl, is taking full swing, and the schools are shut down. Students and parents and educators are spending the morning at picket lines across the district to advocate for better wages for many of the workers across the district. And this is all happening simultaneously when you have the governor, Gavin Newsom, as well as the mayor of San Francisco claiming that they would not support a billionaire tax. And it's like, these are people who are educating the next generation of leaders, the next generation of people who will define what it means to be an American, and how far this country goes. And yet we are investing so little in protecting the rights and safety and health and well-being of teachers and school workers that we are willing to allow billionaires to continue to get these tax breaks while telling teachers and workers and janitor staff that they make enough, that they cannot get more money, despite living in one of the most expensive cities in the country, if not the world.
Yeah. Again, people power. I love to see people rising up and insisting, like, you're not going to tell me that this is normal. You're not going to tell me that I'm going to lay down and roll over for this. And so from educators to students to workers to, like, we should all be rising up. There should be work stoppages. There was just that day of striking and boycotting around ICE as well. And I just hope that we continue to do that around all of the issues that matter, because nothing should move without us. Nothing can move without us. And so we've got to flex that more. Yeah.
Couldn't agree more. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back to dive into the theme of our episode. You're watching On the Other Side of Change, only on the Black Star Network.
I'm Brittany Noble, Midwest-born, HBCU educated with experience in newsrooms across the country. Well, I've teamed up with Roland Martin to bring to you The Breakdown. This isn't just news. It's our stories, our voice, our community. Join me for The Breakdown, Monday through Friday at midday, only on the Black Star Network.
Welcome back to The Other Side of Change, only on the Black Star Network. The name Jeffrey Epstein has consumed headlines around the world, implicating some of the wealthiest and most powerful people doing some of the most unspeakable crimes, including child sex trafficking and abuse. But somehow between the viral clips and the courtroom sketches and redacted pages, we've forgotten that this is supposed to be about, what this is supposed to be about, which is the survivors, those who have been named and those who have yet to be named.
Yeah, exactly. The narrative has been so dominated by all the speculation and deflection, the public relations spin. It has felt more like a reality TV show or like a TMZ drop than what it is, which is proof of deeply disturbing sexual abuse and sexual violence and collusion and other crimes by the people we've elected to serve us, by the people who run the biggest corporations of the world, by royalty. Conversations are so focused on the who and the how. Is this person in there? And, are there more Democrats than Republicans? Are there more Republicans than Democrats? But rarely the what now? Right? Like, okay, well, now that we have all this information, what are we going to do about it? Right? I'm not here to, be like tallying and like keeping score for keeping score's sake. I think we are forgetting that we should be looking for accountability and some semblance of justice and prevention of this sort of thing from happening again. So that silence is strategic. We've seen it before, whether it's Flint's water crisis or Hurricane Katrina or COINTELPRO. But whenever harm is systemic and survivors are poor or Black or brown or women, the cover up is never just a PR strategy. It's also policy. And it's designed to make sure that they can do it again.
Yeah. And I'll add children to that list, right?
Yeah.
We've seen so many crimes against children and the lack of accountability. And what I feel like is the lack of accountability and the normalization or the memification of this conversation is normalizing violence against those who are the most vulnerable even more, right? If we allow some of the most powerful people who have been named, right, who have been showing themselves to be this type of person in black and white, right, in the evidence that have been presented thus far, any accountability that does not come will only normalize this and make them believe that they can get away with it. Also, like, let's be real. We are being told about Jeffrey Epstein and some of his clients or some of the people he's interacted with, but who was his handlers, right? Like, I feel like this goes so much deeper than we've been allowed to really examine, because so many folks are just shell shocked by the amount of information that is coming out from some of the documents that have been released so far. And it's important to frame this moment in a larger context of erasure, right? Erasure from the forms of violence. It removes people from the record, from the story, from the data, from the history. And it always serves power, especially white supremacy, patriarchy, and fascist power. In the case of Epstein, erasure protects the enablers and the dehumanizers that have harmed those who are the most vulnerable within our community, who violence or the inflicted pain that they experience oftentimes go unnoticed, unsupported, and they rarely, if ever, receive any sort of justice. Like the fact that his estate is still operating as normal is bonkers to me. All of that should have been sold off to the victims. Yeah.
Right, exactly. Because, these are people who proclaim to care about women and children so deeply. But then when the person who's the perpetrator is a white male or extremely wealthy or extremely powerful, then they're looking away. And they are the ones who, like, to be clear, this didn't come out of thin air. We have known for quite some time that evidence had been collected about Jeffrey Epstein. And in November of last year, just months ago, Congress passed the Epstein Files Transparency Act. It was bipartisan. Trump signed off on it. So we understood that this was coming. And so now to see the frenzy around covering it up is like, okay, so I think they were posturing and hoping that this day wasn't going to come. And now that it's here, they're trying to distract
by something else, right?
Yeah, exactly. Try to make it about something else. But the intention was always supposed to be about transparency. That's literally in the title of the act that Congress passed. It was to expose how public officials, corporate execs, and state actors were complicit in this. And here we are months later. And what have we seen? We've seen redacted names, just like documents that are completely blacked out, missing files, selective leaks, near total silence from major political parties. I have sifted through these files myself. And so if you go, if you literally Google Epstein files at DOJ, link pops up where you can search by name and look for things. But I mean, sometimes you go to these documents, you find something, you're looking through it, you go back a couple hours later, it's gone. And it's put back up redacted, and so it just feels like, wait a second, are you, oh my God, oops, we accidentally released that one. We meant to keep things back. And like you said, Jamira, like, we only know what they are showing us. There could be which is hard to believe that there could be anything worse, but there could be something worse that is being hidden from us. And
we should assume there's something worse, right? Like, if this is what they're willing to show, imagine things that are still redacted. Imagine the missing files, the missing videos, the missing photos. This is an entity, right? Like the federal government that collected millions of documents and phone records and audio and picture. So I don't believe we have the full picture. I think that if they were willing to list Donald Trump in many of these documents, imagine the names that have not been listed. right?
Yeah.
Imagine those conversations. And let's be real, if the names in those files, the interactions between Jeffrey Epstein were with Black and brown low-income workers, they wouldn't be redacted, right? Survivors wouldn't be ignored. Investigators wouldn't be stalled and pretending like there is no list of clients. We are seeing these double standards play out every single day, from mass incarceration to maternal health to sexual violence on college campuses. Survivors of color are often asked to prove their pain while whiteness is protected at all costs. The whiteness, and this is even more important because this is like really white on white crime, right? This is white males in very prestigious, and some women, white males and white women in very prestigious positions of power with access to insurmountable amounts of money. And they go unnoticed and their actions go unreported. And the victims are poor white women, right? Children, babies who were oftentimes used as pawns for party games and like rituals. And it's just disturbing. So I caution anyone who does look up the Epstein files to be prepared for just recognizing that humans can be some despicable characters. And we are seeing that play out in broad daylight at the highest levels of power.
Yeah. I think the part that's so alarming about it, I mean, it literally feels like something out of a TV show. And it's like, I don't know if life is imitating art or art is imitating life. But it's just like, I think so many of us are so confused because we imagine ourselves in the positions of being powerful, having wealth that we've never imagined. And like the last thing that I would think of doing is what is outlined in some of these files. It's like, where does your depraved mind even come up with the idea to do these sorts of things? I mean, again, to Jamira's point, please be wary going through these documents for yourself. On the one hand, I do think it's important to be a witness and to see what they don't want us to see. On the other hand, trigger warning times 1,000. It is really disturbing. And it's
and also some absolutely losers. The vast majority of those men are absolutely losers. Like Elon Musk begging to go to a party on the island at like 2 a.m. on Christmas. It's like the weirdest behavior of like people who you think have all the money and power and yet are some of the most insecure, diabolical creatures. And like what is
and that's part of why I think it's like they're so depraved and because they feel like left out to an extent. Like there's a part of them that is like healing and nursing something internal through leaning into like this, you know, let me be included in this nastiness. I can't even make sense of it. But I think it's also important to remember that while on one hand, it makes you want to say, oh, like, you know, these people are sick and it's, you know, this is sort of an anomaly, like what they were doing. And no, this is actually not uncommon, so to speak, maybe the level because of the amount of wealth and power that they had available to them. But abuse of power is all too common. You know, 1 in 4 sexual assaults are reported. And when they are, Black women's reports are 45% less likely to result in arrest. According to the Me Too movement, experts, less than 2% of philanthropic giving around gender-based violence goes to women and girls of color. So we see why these sorts of problems persist. And in cases involving high-profile perpetrators, over 70% of media coverage centers on the accused, not the survivors. So while we're kind of going in circles trying to figure out how could this happen, I mean, even how we're having the conversation is how it is allowed to happen.
Oh, absolutely. That's why this is not just about the Epstein files, right? Like this has to be a conversation about power. This has to be a conversation about talking about systems of design to silence the vulnerable and protect those who are the most violent. We're talking about how survivors are used, discarded, and erased unless they fit the perfect victim narrative. And even that perfect victim narrative has to go up against the perfect perpetrator, right? Like they don't want a successful white man to be the perpetrator. If this scheme, if this trafficking ring that Epstein, let's be honest, was running for very powerful people around the world was being led by a Black man, right? Like was being led by an Hispanic man. The amount of visceral violence that many white people would be taking to the street. And to be honest, it's like, I'm disturbed by the amount of lack of care that that this country, like, I feel like we're under responding to the moment. Like, I feel like we should be responding so much more viscerally than we are. And it's making me a little bit nervous, the fact that that so much memification is happening around the files versus us actually saying, no, actually, this is disturbing and we actually need to do something about it.
I think that you just hit it right on the nose. And I appreciate you bringing up like that memification of it. Cause I think that number one, we are a very desensitized people, whether around gun violence, whether around police brutality, military violence. I think we are surrounded by, material that has desensitized us. And so when we see violence playing out, it feels like we're watching a video game, and we are so detached from how it's like someone's life is being forever changed. Someone like what is really happening. I think many of us are devoid of empathy, or we are being kind of like wrung so dry economically and politically and in other ways that we don't even have the capacity to pay attention to something else. And I think that's what I've been feeling, and why, you and I had decided like we have to carve out time to have this conversation, because right now it feels like I could use every second of every day talking about ICE, and that feels like it wouldn't be enough. I could use every second of every day to remind people that police are still killing Black people. And that would not be enough. I could use every second of every day to talk about Palestine, and that wouldn't be enough. And then we have these millions of pages of Epstein files. So, Toni Morrison has that quote about, racism being, the point of it being to be distracting, to be disorienting, to keep you grasping for like, where do I go from here? And then it feels like I can't go anywhere, and people feel debilitated. So it's why I'm so excited for us to have this guest, though, because I think this is someone who just perfectly languages and helps us understand all of this, and gives us calls to actions on what we can do. So when we come back from the break, we are going to speak to the brilliant Shari Dunn and learn more about these cycles and these dynamics, because a reminder, these repeat. What we're experiencing now is something that has been experienced before. And it's why this episode is about surfacing the unseen, especially in a moment where media, politics, and law enforcement seem more invested in optics than in the truth. But that's, again, why you're watching The Other Side of Change only on the Black Star Network. So we'll be back from this short break, and we'll have that conversation.
They said the quiet part out loud. Black votes are a threat, so they erased them. After the Supreme Court gutted the Voting Rights Act in 2013, Republican legislatures moved fast. New voter ID laws, polling place shutdowns, purges of Black voters from the rolls. Trump's Justice Department didn't stop it, they joined in. In 2018, his DOJ backed Ohio's voter purge system, a scheme that disproportionately erased Black voters. Their goal, erase Black votes and political power. Yeah, that happened. These are the kinds of stories that we cover every day on Roland Martin Unfiltered. Subscribe on YouTube and download the Black Star Network app. Support fact-based independent journalism that centers African Americans and the issues that matter to our community.
Welcome back to The Other Side of Change, only on the Black Star Network. I am so excited about today's guest, though this conversation is really heavy and, as we've been saying, very disturbing. This is someone who will help us make sense of it, as if that is possible, but help us make sense of it, how to have this conversation in a new way, how to advocate better. So joining us now is someone who's been sounding the alarm on systemic silences long before this latest news cycle. Shari Dunn is a longtime domestic violence advocate, policy strategist, and the author of Qualified, How Competency Checking and Race Collide at Work, which was published in 2025 from HarperCollins Business. Her work digs into what systems miss and what they intentionally ignore. And I just know that we're going to get so much from this. So welcome to the other side of change, Shari.
Welcome.
Thank you both for having me. Can I say I'm happy to be here with such a happy topic?
Yes.
I'm happy to be here with you all.
Exactly.
Yes.
We appreciate that. Yeah, the topic is heavy and disturbing, but the community in which we're building around it is trying to counter that. So Shari, tell us, let's start from the beginning. What brought you into this work and what's keeping you here?
Well, as Brea said, I had a long time history as a domestic violence advocate. I practiced law. When I practiced law, I was a divorce and custody attorney for victims of domestic violence in Wisconsin. I worked on national policy, training, that type of thing. And I had my own life experiences around this. So there were a lot of things when I was in the justice system that I noticed. And that made me question who this system was set up for and kind of who it wasn't set up for. And then with my book Qualified, which is about race in the workplace, which is really about victimization in its own way, it led me to the question about what are we missing a lot of the times when we talk about issues.
That's real. Yeah, because I feel like we get bombarded by the headlines and not the details of the headlines and what is the story actually about, how deep it actually goes. And we only get satisfied with the 30-second, 60-minute clip. It's weird how the news cycle has shifted to direct us to a particular narrative versus understanding the whole story and what it means for each of us.
Well, to be honest, news just isn't good at that. I mean, news is quite shallow. 2 minutes used to be long for a news story. Of course, right now there are some stories that are getting, sad stories, but getting a disproportionate amount of airtime. So really what's driving is views. And so, that 2 minutes can be extended if you get a lot of views. But the thing of it is, a lot of our discussions in our life, in this world, come down to misidentification. We're frequently misidentifying why something is happening. And then we use that misidentification as the thing we're going to fix. But then that gets us all in trouble because that's not actually the problem.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. No, that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. So now let's bring all of that analysis to these Epstein files. I believe you've been watching the release closely. What are we not talking about enough when it comes to the Epstein files? What are we missing? What patterns are being overlooked when it comes to, just everything involved with that?
Yeah, the thing about the Epstein files for me is, I think I heard you all kind of talking about this, is the worldwide club nature of this abuse, right? You have all of these people across the world who are united by wealth and power and access, and nobody in the room thinks, maybe there's something wrong with this. Or, even after he's convicted, nobody doesn't want to associate with him. Very few people stop associating with him. And that is indicative of our culture. So for me, the thing that we say, this is outrageous how we treat these young women and girls. And but actually, it's actually who we are. And I think going, rewinding the tape all the way back could help us figure out where we have gone wrong. There's nothing new about Jeffrey Epstein, right? I mean, both of you, I know, are very familiar with our history. What was slavery but international sex trafficking in addition to physical labor? Right. And people on plantations having children with their grandchildren. I mean, this is nuts. We have a culture around that is rooted, if we're honest, in the sexual abuse of women and girls and property, which Black folks were. And so culturally, we have shifted our understanding so that we have always had a culture that protected the victim over the victimizer. And that was justification, right?
Yeah.
So that's one of the things I think we misidentified, that something about the Epstein files and all of these primarily men, like you said, you got, it's funny part. I love the question about whether these people are insecure, because can I come to the island? Can I come to the party? Can you get my daughter in? I mean, this goes all the way back to our founding, right? This country was founded by a group of white Protestant men who shared power, access, and authority amongst themselves. So what it really tells us is not much about our foundational setup has changed. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's like we're basically in 1776 or 1676 in a lot of ways, because the Epstein files reveal that power is still traded the same way, that the sexual violence and exploitation is still treated the same way, that the exclusion of primarily Black and other people of color, which quite frankly probably you want to be excluded from this, but it's still the same way. You still see all of that.
Yeah. No, that's so true.
You just
okay.
Sorry,
ahead,
I'm just, my mind is spinning. No, you go.
No, I'm just gonna say I think you're right. Like, I think what's so not ironic, but the idea that this is so abnormal is that it's actually the most normal thing we could see from our society if we are honest about the history of this country, right? And if a country built on genocide and enslavement, of course, this would only be in an escalation of how they would treat women in their own community, right? Seeing them as something to be thrown away and used and discarded because they've never been held accountable for their previous actions, which when I'm thinking through like the Me Too movement, I think that had such a visceral reaction to the culture, and survivors were believed, right? Like survivors felt empowered to come up. I don't think we see that with the Epstein files, because in many ways, like, they're being shunned. They feel under attack by the federal government. And even the media, they're only talking about or elevating their voices in very small batches. And I'm trying to understand, like, is this shift culture or strategic? Is it because many of the people listed in the Epstein files are people who are powerful people in media that are controlling the conversation? It's just very frustrating to see how just a few years after the Me Too movement, we're back in this cycle of identifying powerful men in powerful positions, using women and girls as tools for negotiation and trade.
Well, I mean, in the early parts of the United States history, we traded white women. So there weren't enough white women here to have children. So forcibly, they imported white women. So that's a bit of an untold story about the United States. The United States has been trading in sex trafficking for quite some time. Bringing white women to the United States against their will to be sold, basically, to have children to push up the white population, which is weird because it's the same narrative we're seeing today. Again, there's an Ouroboros quality to all this, a snake eating its tail. And actually, the Me Too movement is the outlier. The Anita Hills saying this happened to me are the outliers. Those are the outliers. What is the mainstream is the fact that we have a culture that doesn't even, and I'm working on another book about this, a work I'm working on, but we have a culture where the word victim as it relates to an individual doesn't even start, we don't even use that in the English language till almost 1500. It's like, and so we don't use it in relationship to the law until 16 something in England. By that time, the Pilgrims were already here. We have a fundamental disconnect between who is a victim and who is a victimizer. And because of that, we have instinctively shamed those who would be victims and elevated those who would be victimizers to justify to what you talked about in slavery, genocide, all those things. And so culturally, I don't even think it's just the media. I don't think culturally we understand how to think, or we are quite uncomfortable facing the scale, the large scale nature of victimization. So it's just so much easier. There was a case out of, it's an East Coast town, long time ago. I can't think of, it was a young woman. She was raped in a fishing town. Maybe it was Cape Cod. Maybe
I heard of this. Yeah.
And, people in the pool hall saw her being raped. They watched her. This is a public raping. And she was taken to trial, and the community shamed her. her. They were mad at her. That is how deep our pathology goes. And this is something we've been trained up on as a culture. So I wouldn't even say it's necessarily the media, but you see, even in Trump, who doesn't even like Bill Clinton, a desire to protect Bill Clinton or protect other people, because that is how this system has been operating from the jump. You know what I mean? And so I think it's totally par for the course that we don't want to know. Who is this man who gave Jeffrey Epstein all this money? The man. Why on God's earth did you give some partial power of attorney to a man who didn't know? That's an easy line of inquiry. But this goes back to holding white people also don't like to hold each other to account. So there's this other thing, there's a lot of talk about domestic violence in the domestic violence community, about Black women being more impacted by domestic violence. And when it comes to death at the hands of men they know, there is a higher percentage of Black women killed death at the hands of men they know. But what we don't know is the level and amount of domestic violence that happens in white homes, because white women are discouraged from reporting. The police, if they intervene, don't write up a report. Children are discouraged from telling at school. So there is a culture there too of hiding information.
Couldn't agree more. No one wants to talk about it because no one wants to actually deal with the reality of what it means to hold these people accountable, especially when it's people who look like them and people from their community and people that they may have relationships with. It feels extremely overwhelming at times, but it's a distraction. For folks who are watching and want to help or feel overwhelmed, what should they be demanding of the public officials or media outlets and philanthropy right now? Or at the very least, what should be they demanding of themselves to be more conscious of what's happening?
Well, a couple of things. First of all, as a society, we have to, it's so funny with everything that's going on. I've been saying that if we can get to the other side of this, we should not want to return to the norms. Those norms weren't working. Nothing about pre-Trump actually was working. What Donald Trump is a mirror to the depravity of who we actually are, the other side, the dark side, the ugly side of our soul. Yeah. So what we should want to do on the other side of this is chart a totally new course. Turns out we're not bound by anything. I mean, you can knock down half the White House, no problem. So apparently, we can change things in fundamental ways. And so we need to, there's so many levels, like where do you start? First of all, I used to practice law, like I said, and people say you can't get involved in families, you can't get involved in homes. That's wrong. Well, when people get divorced, the court's all involved in your house. Where you can go, what you can say. So one of the things I think we as a society need to do, and I'm not talking about, you go to a doctor now, they say, you're safe in your home? Or you have any concerns in your home? That's not intervention. Yeah. We need to work at the school level and in other touch points like they do there's some Scandinavian countries where they follow up with the family in the home. They talk to the parents separately. We need to have a culture of identification of harm, and we need to be comfortable identifying harm. And then we need more resources toward helping those who are harmed. You know what I mean? So it's one thing to go to the doctor's office, say, are you safe in your home? But if you say no, if it ticks off a series of events that leave you homeless, that leave you dispossessed, who's going to say yes, right? So we need to have better structures to catch people and to identify earlier. We need to work with children on foundational issues about bodily autonomy. We started to do that and then we kind of pulled away from that. We as a society bear the cost when we don't do that. We need to demand from elected officials on a national scale a better way of, let's say this, we need to culturally shift our understanding from the protection of victimizers. Oh, you can't do that. So putting the blame, we don't want to blame anybody a lot in this culture, and we want to survive. Oh, I'm a survivor of this. No, somebody is at fault. Somebody needs to be blamed. And I think partly we need to, as a culture, question the victimizer as much as we question the victim. You know what I mean? So there's cultural, there's a legal, and there's kind of a structural changes that need to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, they do feel big, but we can make these changes. I mean, we got here, and like I said, under the Trump administration, we see anything's possible. I mean, you literally can do anything you want, and no, you can close kids, you can rename stuff, you can do whatever you want. So apparently, on the other side of this, we can use that same theory of change.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, what is a rule under a Trump administration? What is like traditional or normal?
No, but also, on the flip side of that, Jamira had made a great point on our last episode that there are progressive examples of that, like Zoran Mamdani, are showing us that you can get things through when you need to get it through. So let's actually push the envelope and ensure that this is a true priority for us. So thank you for just the clarity of all of this. How can people follow your work and stay plugged into what you are doing, both on and offline? We know you have a book already out, but just all of the places, where can people support you?
Yeah, well, I'm on LinkedIn, and it's Shari, Shari Dunn. People get the E, you'll lose me. So it's A. I'm on Substack. You can find me at Shari Dunn or Qualified on Substack. I am on Instagram. I'm not on TikTok as much because when I logged on last time, they said something about I had to agree to geolocation. I'm like, well, I'm not agreeing to that. So
yeah, Jamira just got off TikTok, and I might be next.
Yeah, so I was like, I'm not going to be geolocated. And then I have my website, thesharidunn.com.
Nice.
Yes. And her book is right above her head. Point at it, Shari. It is incredible. It is. You all need to get this book qualified. We'll have to do another episode where we bring you up to talk about this. But imposter syndrome is not real. And Shari has written the book on that.
Love it. Yeah. Love it. Well, it was a pleasure to have you. And thanks for coming on.
Thanks.
So we're going to take a quick break where you are watching The Other Side of Change only on the Black Star Network. And we'll be right back.
They said the quiet part out loud. Black votes are a threat, so they erased them. After the Supreme Court gutted the Voting Rights Act in 2013, Republican legislatures moved fast. New voter ID laws, polling place shutdowns, purges of black voters from the rolls. Trump's Justice Department didn't stop it, they joined in. In 2018, his DOJ backed Ohio's voter purge system, a scheme that disproportionately erased black voters. Their goal, erase black votes and political power. Yeah, that happened. These are the kinds of stories that we cover every day on Roland Martin Unfiltered. Subscribe on YouTube and download the Black Star Network app. Support fact-based independent journalism that centers African Americans and the issues that matter to our community.
Welcome back to The Other Side of Change only on the Black Star Network. These stories are very heavy, but we can't look away. Refusing to become numb is a form of resistance. And the world is going to change, and it can't change if we do not all bear witness to what is actually happening right now so we don't repeat it.
Yeah, exactly. And as we've said throughout this episode, history has been repeating itself. We said that in last episode as well. The way to stop is, as you said, is to bear witness, but also to support survivor-led work. Listen when people speak truth to power, and deepen your understanding of the issues that you're seeing coming at you. Do not be distracted. Do not allow them to desensitize you. Insist on understanding and insist that there can be something better. So we recommend books like Unbound by Tarana Burke, Believing by Anita Hill, Know by Name by Chanel Miller, and Push Out by Monique Morris.
Yep. And you are watching The Other Side of Change only on the Black Star Network. Follow us, share this episode, and remember, accountability is not a witch hunt. It is how we break the spell and hold those who have been doing harm accountable. Until next time, stay loud, stay rooted, and stay ready.